Hello and welcome to Warblog. This is the capture of Bonny Island, which is part of the Nigerian Civil War, Biafran War, 1967. First major engagement for the Nigerian Navy. There's a few assumptions here, well, not so much assumptions, but I don't really have this sort of naval engagement that I'm depicting here, because essentially this is a landing ship, Ogoja, NSS Ogoja, and it should have all these units in it, but essentially they're not. They're just there, so you have to sort of move them along, at the same rate. And the Marines have 3 movement points, whereas the NSS Ogoja has 4, so obviously you could sail that a lot further along, so you've got to just play with it. It's not a biggie. I mean, to be quite honest, I don't really want to sort of faff around with that sort of stuff. I mean, it would probably be just as well to not include that. The interesting thing here is the account that I'm getting this from, which is in the link there. It's quite interesting, because it makes a lot of assumptions about how stupid the Biafrans were and about how great the Nigerians were. But the navy was essentially founded in sort of about 1958. Let me have a look. It's not really that important when it was, but I feel like getting it right. Nigerian Navy, something about 19. Obviously they've got some heritage back to 1914, but that was before they were independent. About 1958, 1959, 1957, 1959. So. The title was changed to the Nigerian Navy in 1963 after Nigeria became a republic. A new law was put in place, the Navy Act of 1964. So essentially they created their navy then. So the point is, it's sort of, it's an independent, a new country, and they've got this new navy. And the article sort of talks about certain things, and it also relates to an incident where I think it's in Lagos. All their sort of fairly clever ships were in port in Lagos, and then there was suddenly the power went out for about 2 hours, and because they're saying there wasn't particularly good security on the naval docks, and during the power outage, someone had gone in and basically sabotaged all the fairly sensitive and critical electronic equipment, and also done a lot of damage to all the main guns and armaments, basically sabotaged all their ships in a couple of hours whilst someone turned the lights out, which is quite fascinating. And it stems on from that, because the Biafrans were obviously responsible, and they were sort of stated as not believing that the Nigerians had a navy or capable of doing naval assaults, and this is obviously the first one. They hadn't done anything before. They were supposedly, using their navy, because this is all about oil here. Maybe I'll just stick some oil fields in here, but it sort of says that it's talking about a particular officer. The UK Deputy High Commissioner in Enugu, and his American counterpart, was essentially, they asked Colonel Ojukwu, I think, basically one of the commanders of the Biafran Navy, about the amphibious operations, or basically the Nigerian naval operations off the coast, and the Biafran person replied he doesn't know where the Nigerian vessels go when they depart Lagos, but they are not, he repeated, they are not patrolling off the coast of Biafra. And obviously then they sort of do this. But another little incident, and I haven't quite got this right either, but it's sort of one of these things where I'll maybe try and make it a bit quick so I can get some action in. It's one of these things that it was actually sort of, there's two errors here in the sort of the historic sort of narrative of what happened. The first one was obviously that they're basically talking about the importance of the naval barrage, take out the units, and then the cleverness of landing where you're not expected. Well, considering you've got this many units, I don't think it's really that important. I don't think there was much here. But they landed in the north, and they said there's a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, they weren't expecting it, so I've sort of left it a bit unpopulated. It's all marshland, they're not really sort of wandering around in the mangrove swamps. But it also meant that they couldn't reinforce from whatever's to the north of that, Port Harcourt, which would have been coming down this sort of estuary here and coming down here. So they were basically taking it from here. I'm not sure, but the bottom line is their landing vessel basically it grounded in the swamps, and it's not sure how they get on because it's not particularly well written. But it sort of states that that they had to sort of land in rubber dinghies, and small craft. So it says, however, despite the successful landing of troops, by the Lieutenant Commander in his ship NNS Ogoja, it would have been the first casualty if in the war if Biafra had a formidable force in that sector rather than the naval preliminary bombardment of the landing site. That doesn't make any sense. But basically, the NSS Ogoja was grounded and could not take reinforcements to town. However, Peterside Beach, which is opposite Bonny, so that's somewhere over here. I wonder where Peterside Beach is. It's actually sort of detailed in Google Maps. No. But so they basically something Peterborough Beach. It sounds as though they land in all these mango swamps where you wouldn't expect someone to land because it's impossible to land, and then their landing craft gets grounded and they have to do something else. I'm not sure, but anyway, that's a sort of a technicality because in theory you can land in these very shallow, gooky mango swamps. That's fine. But then afterwards, basically this ship here, the Ogoja, it encounters the only naval vessel that the Biafrans have, which was the NSS Ibadan. They renamed it to the BNS, which probably stands for the Biafran Naval Services. And so sort of towards the next day, I've got this on turn 6, they basically, Ibadan, they come on. Now, I've given them a 4-4, but in theory they had much bigger capabilities. They had sort of like they had 40-60 millimeter shells, whereas the Ogoja only had 3-inch mounted guns. So the BNS Ibadan was better equipped than NSS Ogoja, which had 3-inch mounted guns, while the Biafrans mounted puny Bofor anti-aircraft guns on BNS Ibadan. It was designed to pump out 40-60 millimeter shells in rapid succession. This is interesting, but unfortunately, when she engaged Ogoja, it kept jamming on every third or fourth round. While BNSS Ibadan had the advantage of firepower over Ogoja, Ogoja had the advantage of operating from an area of the sea that was impossible for a ship to run aground. So basically what happened is it would misfire every 2 or 3 rounds, and so it would sort of come in like this or something, it would fire, and then it would run away whilst it fixed its guns, and it would come back in, run away, fire, and apparently this motion was sort of heading it towards somewhere, and it basically sort of ran aground, becoming a stationary target, and then the Ogoja basically fired at it as a stationary target, and it was set on fire, and it's declared their humility, and that they allowed they stopped firing to allow the crew to get off and swim ashore or things like that. But anyway, so it's got this interesting naval engagement. I can't remember how my naval engagements rules work, so that will be interesting to see how that works. So let's just see if I can play it. I might do another video and just get straight into the playthrough. YouTube doesn't allow you to stitch videos together anymore, and I'm just not going to do it on my computer. It's another time. So anyway, so the first round, I think we're going to move. That's stupid. Because I've got caught in the zone of control, but I don't have a zone of control into sea. Why can't these naval vessels move? 1 minute. Okay, well, I've sort of fixed that error, so what I'm going to do is reload it and start from scratch, so to speak. So anyway, they have their sort of big battle, and let's just test that. A few things we've got to sort of test. Yep, they can move. Brilliant. Yep, can't move into there, which is good. And naval units, of course, now not being affected by zones of control. It'd be nice if they could move a bit faster than that. So we're pretending that the landing craft has got all these ships in it. Oh, it's not something I can twiddle with now. Those other things are sort of... The reason I sort of had a few bugbears lately is because a while back I added functionality to allow units to move if they've got a road, like a causeway, and it has knock-on effects. Yeah, it's a bit of a pain. But anyway, so that's all the movement. We're going to do some artillery fire. Why not? See what we can do against this. 1.1. Well, that's good. And against this. 1.8, that's good as well. And we're not going to fire with the landing craft because we're assuming it's just landing. So it's the end of the turn, and because I've only got 2 minutes left because I'm so crap at all this, I might play this through again with a bit actually, but the Bifron's not going to do anything because I've got a surprise landing somewhere in the north. So what we're going to do, move all these units a bit further round. Oops. I can never actually replicate that when I want to. Not that I ever want to, but it's sort of one of those sort of mousy glitches. Okay, so here they're probably recovered to 0.1, but it doesn't matter, we'll fire at them again. Quite honestly, we shouldn't really be firing at that unit. 2.3, that's good. Should be firing at ones in the town. Oh no, effect, we need that, it's going to recover now. Well, at least he's a little further down. Bifron's not going to do anything. So now we're going to do our surprise northern landing. There. But we don't have the movement. Because it's marsh. What we really need to do... Pause 1 minute. Okay, I think I've edited it, so we should now be able to actually complete that landing. Yes. They're now, instead of being 3 to get into there, they're now 1. I mean, they are Marines, these are mangroves. So there's our landing. So we've got 12 seconds left. That's pretty much the. That's pretty much that. I think I'm going to play this again in a bit and Yeah, so see you later. Bye.